He knew what was coming. Not because someone told him, because he dreamed it. His father was a watcher. His grandfather was one of the 200 who descended on Mount Hermon before the flood. And he, Mahaway, was the one they sent to find out if the dream was real. What I found in the Dead Sea Scrolls about this moment changed how I understand everything that happened before the flood. Not after. Before. The Book of Giants, fragment 4Q530, is one of the least discussed texts found at Qumran. It was discovered in Cave 4 in 1947 alongside the fragments of 1st Enoch, and it records something that 1st Enoch does not. It records what the Nephilim knew and feared before the flood came. But first, you need to understand who Mahaway was, because most people who have studied the Nephilim have read 1st Enoch. Very few have read the Book of Giants. And the difference between reading one and reading both is the difference between knowing what happened to the Nephilim and understanding what they experienced. By the end of this video, you will understand what the Dead Sea Scrolls record about the last days of the Nephilim, from the inside, not from God's perspective, from theirs. One dream, one messenger, and a text that Qumran preserved for 2,000 years. Genesis 6 records the flood from God's perspective. 1st Enoch 15 records what happened to the Nephilim spirits after the flood. But the Book of Giants records something neither text addresses directly: what the Nephilim themselves experienced in the days before the water came. The giants had dreams. 4Q530, the Book of Giants fragment found at Qumran, records 2 of those dreams. And the giants were so disturbed by what they saw that they sent a messenger to find Enoch, the only human who could interpret what the visions meant. That messenger was Mahaway. His lineage is recorded in the text. His father was Barakel, one of the Watchers, which means Mahaway was neither fully human nor fully angelic. He was Nephilim, a giant, and he was the one chosen to carry the dreams to Enoch. What I find significant here, and what no commentary I have read addresses directly, is that the giants knew something was wrong. The text does not describe them as comfortable or powerful in those final days. It describes them as afraid. Stop, read that again. The Nephilim, the beings that made Israelite spies feel like grasshoppers according to Numbers 13:13-3, were afraid. Not of Moses, not of an army, of what they saw when they closed their eyes. But first, you need to understand what the dreams actually recorded, because 4Q530 is specific. This is not vague prophetic imagery. The text describes the content of the dream in detail. The first dream, dreamed by a giant named Oya, showed a massive tablet being submerged in water. The names written on it, all but 3, were erased by the water. All but 3. In the tradition that produced this text, 8 people survived the flood: Noah, his wife, his 3 sons, and their wives. The 3 names preserved on the tablet in Oya's dream correspond to that number exactly. The Nephilim dreamed the flood before it happened, and they understood what it meant. The second dream, recorded in the same fragment, showed a garden being flooded and consumed by fire. Every tree burned except 3. Same number, same survivors, different image, same conclusion. But first, this is where the text becomes unlike anything else found at Qumran. The giants did not interpret these dreams themselves. They could not, because the dreams came from outside their understanding. Their fathers, the Watchers, were bound and in prison according to 1st Enoch 10. They could not ask them. So they sent Mahaway, a Nephilim, the son of a Watcher, flying across the earth to find the one human who walked with God, to ask Enoch what the dreams meant. That journey is recorded in 4Q530, and what Enoch told him, word for word, is what this video is built toward. Here is where the Book of Giants produces something that changes how you read the entire Enoch tradition. First Enoch records God's decree about the Nephilim. The Book of Giants records the Nephilim's response to that decree, before it was fully executed. That distinction matters more than I initially understood when I first read both texts side by side. Fallen angels were condemned and bound. First Enoch records this. 2 Peter 2:4 records this. Jude 1:6 records this. But the Nephilim, their offspring, were not bound. They were still free, still on the earth, still capable of receiving dreams and sending messengers. And they were terrified. Stop. Read that again. The beings that Genesis describes as mighty men of renown, the beings whose existence required a worldwide flood to address, were receiving prophetic dreams about their own destruction and did not know what to do with them. What strikes me about this, and what the Book of Giants makes explicit that First Enoch does not, is that the Nephilim had consciousness of their own fate. They were not passive subjects of judgment. They were active participants in their final days. Mahaway flew to Enoch. The text says he flew. The fragment uses language that implies supernatural movement. He crossed the earth and found Enoch beyond the ends of the world. And Enoch read the dream. 4Q530 records Enoch's interpretation. The tablet in the dream represented the generations of humanity. The water erasing the names represented what the flood would accomplish. The three names preserved, those were the survivors. And then Enoch said something that the Book of Giants records that First Enoch does not say directly. He told Mahaway, "The decree has been issued. It will not be reversed. Return to the giants and tell them what you have heard." Mahaway returned, carrying a message he knew they did not want to receive. There is no text in the Dead Sea Scrolls that describes this moment more precisely. A hybrid being, half watcher, half human, carrying a divine judgment back to his own people. But first, look at what this means for Numbers 13:33. The Israelite spies entered Canaan after the flood and encountered the Anakim, descendants of the Nephilim. The same word, the same lineage, physical giants, building cities, occupying territory. If the flood destroyed the Nephilim, how did the Anakim survive? The Book of Giants does not answer this directly, but it establishes something that makes the question answerable. The giants in the Book of Giants knew the flood was coming. They received the dream. They interpreted it. And some of them, the text implies, may have acted on that knowledge. Not all of them waited passively for the water. The Book of Giants describes the giants dispersing, moving through the earth, in the period before the flood arrived. Scattering. As 1 Enoch 15 would later confirm, their spirits could not be destroyed by water. And as Numbers 13:33 would confirm, their physical descendants appeared in Canaan after the flood. Nobody reads these three texts together. The New Testament confirms the imprisonment that the Book of Giants describes. 1 Peter 3:19 says Christ proclaimed to the spirits in prison. Those spirits are the watchers, bound since the flood, the fathers of the very giants who sent Mahaway to find Enoch. But Mahaway's story does not end with his return. The Book of Giants fragment 4Q531, a different fragment from the same cave, describes what happened in the days after Mahaway returned with Enoch's answer. After reading both fragments carefully, this is what the text records that I have not seen discussed anywhere. The giants did not accept the judgment quietly. The fragments describe conflict among the giants themselves. Some accepted the message, others refused it. The text implies violence, giants fighting giants in the final days before the flood. The Nephilim, already knowing the flood was coming, turned on each other. And Enoch's role in this, recorded across both 1 Enoch and the Book of Giants, is unique in all of ancient literature. He was the one human who stood between two worlds. He walked with God, and a Nephilim flew across the earth to find him. What that says about Enoch and what it says about the Nephilim is something the Western canon never preserved. Because the Book of Giants was not included in any major Bible translation, it was removed. Not from Qumran, they kept it. From every version of Scripture you have ever read. The council that met in 364 AD in Laodicea made that decision. One vote. Gone. 2,000 years later, Cave 4 gave it back. When you read Genesis alone, the flood is a divine reset. Clean. Complete. When you read Genesis alongside 1st Enoch, alongside the Book of Giants, alongside 1st Peter, the flood was not clean. The Nephilim knew it was coming. They dreamed it. They sent a messenger. They received the answer. And some of them, according to the fragments, did not go quietly. Mahaway flew back to his people carrying a message he could not change. The Book of Giants recorded his journey. The Dead Sea Scrolls preserved it. And for 2,000 years, nobody connected it to what 1st Enoch 15 describes happening after the flood. Same source, same tradition, same Qumran cave. Now you know. Subscribe, because this channel reads the texts they removed. All of them. One question before you go. Mahaway was neither fully human nor fully angelic. He carried a divine message to his own people, knowing it meant their destruction. According to the text, not theology, what does that make him? Drop your answer below.
Llevo semanas leyendo estos fragmentos. Lo que encontré en la cueva 4 me cambió la perspectiva completamente. Si este video te hizo pensar diferente, dímelo en los comentarios. Quiero leer tu respuesta. Y si quieres que siga investigando estos textos para ti, el link de PayPal está en la descripción. Nos vemos en el próximo video.